Hey everyone, it's Stacy from the Mental Fitness Center. I wanted to do a video, and it's actually probably going to be a series of videos because there's a lot of information to share about something that I see that we're missing in this time, in this scare of the coronavirus. And that is understanding the fear response and what to do with our fear response from a psychological perspective. So we're doing a really good job about taking care of our physical needs. So we're making sure we have food, we have shelter, we have water, those basic needs. But I think it would be helpful also to provide some education about fear and a fear response in order to take care of our mental health needs, because that's also very important during this time, is to make sure we're keeping in check what's happening psychologically in order to promote good health. Because when we're in a good mental space, we can be present and be in a good physical space. So one thing I see on social media is this broad spread of responses to the coronavirus. There's one side of the continuum that's a very fear-based response, where it's like, I'm really worried about not having enough food. I'm worried about someone I love getting sick and maybe even dying. Sort of that real fear. And then there's the other side of the continuum that's people that it doesn't phase. This is nothing new. They just go on living their lives. Now, in my field, I try to stay away from what's a right and wrong response, because we don't know what people have been through. I just stay out of that. I'm not one to judge someone based on how they're feeling. I can't tell them how they're feeling or how they should feel. What they're feeling is real. So with a little bit of education on how that works from a physiological and psychological perspective, and then also tools, if you're finding yourself in a place that you don't want to be, what do you then do about it to get yourself out of it? Now, the whole point of this is, if we give power back to people to control their own lives, to control their own experiences, that is the best situation we're going to be in. Rather than telling people they should or shouldn't feel this way, they are or aren't overreacting. Generally, in my experience, that's not helpful. Now, some cases it is, but in general, if we put the power back in the individual person of choosing how they want to respond to something that's happening, then we're all better for it. We're not projecting how I think people should feel on someone else. So that's what I'm going to try and do in these videos. This video is going to be more just about the fear response. What is it? How does it work from a psychological perspective? And then I'll do further videos on, okay, now that I understand it, what do I need to do with it? So there are a couple simple things to really understand about the fear response. I do want to say that people spend their entire lives studying fear. This is just a quick video on a broad stroke of how it works. So I'm not going to get very in depth into things. It is very simple. I'm going to make it very simple, but there's, like most things, it's a lot more complex. So the fear response is a primitive human experience. It's a survival response, a survival mechanism that kept us alive for these thousands and thousands of years. So if you think about, like, back when humans started walking the earth, we had a lot of things that challenged our existence. Saber-toothed tigers, neighboring tribes, all sorts of stuff that challenged our existence and challenged our safety. Now, as we have developed, we don't have exactly those same kind of threats, but because of the thousands of years with those real threats, our body and our mind has wired itself to respond in a fear response. Even over things that seem like aren't scary or that you shouldn't have a fear response to. Our mind and body kind of run their own show. Now, like I said, this is a primitive response, and so that's just suggesting that this goes back thousands and thousands of years, and it's not something that you wake up tomorrow and you can just change. The other thing to consider is our fear response serves a purpose, even nowadays. even nowadays, it keeps us safe in situations where we need to be able to respond in such a way to preserve our existence. So it's not something I would want to get rid of, because if I have a dog chasing after me, I want to respond in a way that's going to keep me safe. I don't want to get rid of my fear response and not react to what's happening. So it's not something we want to get rid of by any means. It's something that we want to acknowledge how we're feeling and then determine how we want to respond in the situation, whether we need to respond in a certain way. So people in what's going on might have a legit fear response. Like it's something primitive that's coming out in them. So there's no, I avoid saying, oh, you're not scared. Oh, why are you making this up? Oh, it's not that bad. Because it really, physiologically and psychologically, their body could be responding differently. Even though consciously and cognitively, they could be telling themselves, it's fine, what are you freaking out about? Their body is responding in a different way. Hello, anxiety, right? A lot of people that experience anxiety, this happens, and you'll know that your body is reacting, even though your mind can be like, relax, it's not a big deal. Your body is still like, are we fighting or flighting? Are we fighting or flighting? So there's a disconnect between the two. And so what we're going to go over is how to connect those back up so you can respond in a way that is most healthy and most appropriate for you. Let's get into the fear response. So it's something, I'm going to break it down a little bit into something you guys are probably familiar with, which is the fight, flight, freeze response. Now, right now, we're going to get rid of the freeze response because that's going to be a separate piece of it. And we're going to just look at fight or flight. I'm sure everyone has heard this, that it gets us ready to combat whatever it is or to run from whatever is bothering us. The problem is a lot of times our body doesn't know if we're in imminent danger or not. And that's sort of what the snag is right now and what we need to develop. So one of the bad things about our body constantly being in fight flight mode is that's part of the nervous system. It's the central nervous system reaction to its environment. Now, the central nervous system is helpful when it comes to actually surviving, but if we are constantly taxing the central nervous system, so our body is constantly on edge, ready to fight, ready to flight, this is especially common with anxiety. You're in that state. People with PTSD or any kind of hypervigilance, their nervous system is on overdrive all the time because there's no discernment on whether or not they're in imminent danger or not. Their body thinks they are, even though they might be removed from a situation. So what we want to think about is how that strain affects our nervous system. There's a whole bunch of nervous system diseases that you can look into that can be impacted by constantly being in this state. It's exhausting for our body to constantly be in this state. So the better we can acknowledge what state we're in, determine what our danger is, and then move which direction, the better we can take care of our body and return it back to a homeostasis or like a equilibrium. A lot of people with anxiety, their state is a little bit higher and it's hard to get back into that homeostasis, which is where our body functions the best. We should be bouncing up and then coming back down, not bouncing up and staying up for a long period of time. So understanding that piece of it, there's two things I want to go over. Number one is that it's important for us to, one, know what's a real threat and know what's not. And then two, if there is a real threat, knowing what to do. And if there isn't a real threat, knowing what to do. Even if our body is reacting as if there is a threat, we might know that there's not an imminent threat. And that's a big piece. So asking yourself, is this fight or flight response helping me get out of danger in this exact moment? is this fight or flight response helping me get out of danger in this exact moment? So that's something, as you're experiencing what's happening with the coronavirus, what's happening with the shutdown, all of these things, is it helping me? Because there are times that it will be helping you and you want to take advantage of it. There are also times where it's not helping you and you want to divert it to a different direction. So that's the first thing that I suggest people ask themselves as they go through this self-analysis of where you're at. Remember, I said this is an individual thing. No one can tell you yes or no. It's your experience and you choose your experience. So that's going to be step one. The second step is going to be, let me do a drawing for this. It's going to be understanding, this is funny, what happens physiologically when our body goes into a fight or flight response. So we have, there's two parts of the brain that I want to talk about. Let's see if y'all can see this. That's the brain. I will not quit my day job. Okay, this is brainstem going down. Okay, so there's two parts of the brains that I want to, I don't know why I say brains. The brain that I want to focus on when explaining fight-flight response. One is, it's a little almond-shaped gland here. It's called the amygdala. And the other is this whole section right here, which is called the prefrontal cortex. So these both play an important role in when we're responding to fear. The amygdala is a very old part of our brain. It's where our fight-flight response comes from. So when our eyeballs, so our eyes are like here, right? When they see danger, they are processing information, sending it back to the brain, sending it to the amygdala. The amygdala is processing it. There's about a million more steps in between there, but kind of skipping ahead. They send it to the amygdala, and the amygdala kicks in if there's danger and starts to decide whether we're going to fight, flight, or freeze. So the amygdala is sounding the alarms, going off, determining that there's danger and we need to respond. Well, that's good if we need to respond. But what happens in the process is, because the amygdala is sort of taking over, it doesn't allow our prefrontal cortex to kick in. We are just responding very primitively. Whatever reaction comes up is what we're doing. Now, the prefrontal cortex, which is just this front part of our brain, it's in charge of, we call it executive functioning. So this is like decision making, good decision making. It is where impulse control comes from. It is where like coordinating and adjusting complex behavior. So I need to get a spoon from the drawer before I eat my food. That's where this all comes from. It comes from attention and focus. And it comes, like, in this area also happens being able to predict a consequence for your behavior. So, if we look at kiddos, their brain takes a little bit longer to develop, right? Our brain developed in general back to front. So the prefrontal cortex is one of the last pieces to develop. And so kids that are impulsive, kids that don't make good decisions, a lot of it is because their brain isn't developed fully yet, and they're not capable of doing it. Now, that doesn't get your kids off the hook for doing stuff, but it explains why it might be difficult, or why parents feel like they're explaining a consequence over and over, or you knew this would happen if you did this. There's a chance that that part of their brain isn't developed. Also, this goes into like TBI and head injury. So football players, for example, that have a lot of head injury, they're finding studies that are finding that they have the tendency to be more aggressive. Well, one of those reasons is because damage to the prefrontal cortex, impulse control. If you're damaging the part of your brain that controls your impulses, what does that mean? You're going to be more impulsive. You're going to be more aggressive. You're not going to make good decisions. So this part of our brain is really important for further existence, right? So we need both these parts. We need a part of our brain that's teaching us how to survive in the moment. And then we need that part of our brain that's giving us a little bit of foresight in how do I want to build my life. That's not just a fear reaction. So the problem when we get into fight, flight is, or when our amygdala is activated, is it kind of paralyzes our prefrontal cortex. So we can't make complex decisions. It is difficult to have impulse control. Now, when you're in a threatening situation, that's okay. You want to react quickly. You don't want to be considering everything, all your options. If I do this, then this. You want to get the heck out of there, or you want to fight back. You don't, spending extra time thinking about the situation could threaten you. If a saber-toothed tiger shows up at your cave, you don't want to be like, well, I could attack it, but I see that it has 17 teeth, and so there's a chance that one of those teeth, you want to just react. So knowing that as we go through this coronavirus and this shutdown of what part of our brain is getting engaged. So the people that are feeling panicked, that are legit feeling fear, this part of their brain is engaged, and it is difficult to engage other parts of their brain. Now, like I said, the question you need to ask yourself, is your fight or flight response helping you with imminent danger? Yes or no? That's your own answer. If yes, it's helping you, then go on, do what you need to do to keep yourself safe. If it's not helping you, or it's getting in the way because it's not allowing you to constructively think, then what we need to do is quiet this part of the brain so that this part of the brain can kick in. That is going to be what my next video is on, is how do we quiet that amygdala. And the nervous system is going down here, right? So the nervous system is shooting out saying like, okay, body, get ready. We're going to fight. Digestion, slow down. Blood, back to your torso because we need explosive energy. Adrenaline is increasing. If we need that, good. If we don't need that, we need to figure out how to quiet this part of the brain down so this part of the brain can start thinking. Okay. I'm going to stop right there. Stay tuned for our next video on what to do next.